Hi, my name is Professor Nick Ayers, and this is the course introduction for POLS 122, Section 301 for summer of 2026. This video is one that I made to help describe what the course is about, a little bit about me, the lessons and how they're structured, and really to help assist you for this summer class as a completely online class. And that's really a lot structured toward your own pace. It's just important for you to have a good idea of how the material is, structured in Canvas so that you can do as well as you can. And then, if there's any questions, obviously, ask me. What I want to begin with a little bit is like, what's the purpose of this class and really what are you trying to get by the end of it? Polls 122 is a course that is designed to provide you an opportunity to learn about political science as a discipline. So at the end of this class, you should be able to do a couple things. Number one, you should be able to define some basic political concepts and provide examples, to be able to describe the major fields that exist within political science, to be able to describe different political and economic systems, discuss some of the enduring questions, and be able to apply this knowledge to real-world examples. What this class is not is a completely in-depth study of all the different types of political science down to all the micro details. As a semester-long class is trying to introduce you to the overall field of political science, we're going to deal with a lot of different fields and we'll talk about some of the major concepts. And at the end of the day, not only do we want you to be able to do the things here as part of the end state, but for those that want to continue to take political science classes, for you to have a better idea of what kind of political science you might enjoy taking. And that's really why we design it to try to cover as many different types of political science, as many different types of topics, to help give you an idea of what are the other types of classes that you can take. Now, the way that I've got the course material designed is really in three main sections. You've got a foundations block, there's a fields block, and then there's a challenges. And when you think about the modules here, think about that as about a week's worth of material. So I've designed this class as a normal semester course that's around 13 to 14 weeks. And so each one of the modules constitutes about a week's worth of work. Because you're taking this summer class, it condenses it down. So one would be about a half a week's. You'd have to do two modules in a week, basically, in order to kind of be at a normal pace. So that's why I want to make sure that you understand how this course is designed and how to go about it. Now, in modules 1 through 3, we're going to talk about some of the main players, some of the main ideas and tools that exist in political science. And then in modules 4 through 11, we go in depth and talk more about the different fields. This includes international relations, American politics, comparative politics, non-state concepts. And then in the last two modules, we're going to go back to some of these enduring questions around war and conflict and trade environment. And that's where we kind of use the concepts that came earlier in the class to reapply them to the study of conflict and study of trade and the economy and environment. The main resource for this course is a textbook called Challenge of Politics, Edition 7. You can also use editions 5 or 6, but the one that goes to the bookstore is in edition 7. The content is the same if you use 5 or 6, and within the syllabus, I list out what the page numbers would be if you have those versions. Additionally, there is YouTube and there are some additional websites. I'll talk about what the YouTube resource is, how that's structured, and mostly it's around virtual lectures. So you can watch a lecture of the material in addition to doing the reading. The other note I'll say is that if you get a digital version of the book that's not from the bookstore, just note that the page numbers might not line up. So we've learned that over time with students, and that's why we encourage you to use the one that comes through the bookstore, and the one that I've got a link on with Canvas. Now, the way the points are broken down in the class is there's a series of module assessments. Think of those as quizzes. There's a couple written assignments as like response papers. There's two short response videos, and then there's two surveys. The surveys, think of those as just kind of a question and answer done at the beginning of the course and end of the course. At the end of the day, there's 1,000 points in the class that your points are graded against. So if you think about it as the denominator is 1,000, whatever points you get, I divide by that. And then your grading criteria is on the right. Johnson County uses a standard A, B, C, D, F sort of standards, and there's not a plus or minus. Now, for the quizzes, there's five of them. Each one of them is worth 100 points. They are timed and online. They're open note, but not open partner. And the way to think about that is that when you open up the quiz, a timer will start, and they generally take about an hour. So you want to make sure that you give yourself enough time before the due dates. On the written assignments, it's a little bit different. So think of these as response papers. There are two of them. One's worth 100 points and one worth 200 points. They're a couple pages long. They are not timed, but they're online. And what differentiates them is that you can read the topic and you can think about it. And as long as you turn it in by the suspense date, you're fine. So that's different than how the quizzes are set up. The reflection essay is the last paper, and that's one where, again, it's not timed and it's online. For the short response videos, there are two of them. Each one is worth 80 points. And what that is that you will watch a video and then you're given a series of questions. And the idea is that you are responding much quicker. So it is not intended that you're going to have to do a ton of research from that. You're going to use material from the class, and you're kind of responding to what is being said. And those are you have 24 hours to complete it once you open up that assignment. So it doesn't have to be immediate. You have a little bit more time than the quiz, but it is designed so that when you watch it, think about it, and then respond back to it. And then the last two things are the surveys. There's one at the beginning of the course and one at the end of the course. Now, if you'll notice in the upper left, if you added up 500, 350, 160, and 20, you would actually get more than 1,000. And so there are some extra points that are already built into the class. Um, if you do the quizzes, or sorry, the surveys, that's an additional basically 2 points that are free. And during some assignments, there are some opportunities to earn extra credit points. But as you can see, because I don't use a plus or minus and it's just 900 points above, all you have to do is get above 90% and you get an A, 80%, a B, and so on. Now I'm going to talk to you about the way the lessons are broken out. I'm going to populate this sort of animated map. All right. So the way that this is designed is that you've got basically three main due dates when things are due. The initial survey is due on 6/14. That's on Sunday. The reason for that is that you have to complete an assignment during the first week in Johnson County in order to stay enrolled. And so that survey is what I have that you do. There's two parts. One is a written part. You'll answer some questions. It takes about 5 minutes. And then I want you to record a short video introducing yourself. And again, it's about 1 or 2 minutes. As long as you answer that, that's easy points and you stay enrolled. The next May due date you'll see there is 7/12. So I've basically taken the points in the course and have two main times when things are due. One about midway and one at the very end. Quizzes 1, 2, the short response video 1, and the response paper 1 are all due on July 19th. And then everything else is due on August 2nd. Now, the other dates that are in there, it's kind of up to you when you want to do those modules. I've given you a recommended time in which I would do them just in order to keep things manageable. So I would do modules 1 and 2 in that first week, module 3 in the second week. Again, you've got a little bit of overlap there. Doing modules 4 and 5 in the next week. And then you got modules 7 and 8 during the next week, see module 9 in the next week, and so on. You can work ahead or you can work behind. It's up to you on what suits your schedule best. But there is that midpoint of due dates. And the reason why I do that is because when I've made the points all at the end, there are students that have wished that they would have gotten feedback earlier, or they get behind and they can't make up the points. And so I want to give students a gauge on how they're doing and make sure that they're going to be able to complete the material. The other thing I'll note is that the due dates of 8/2 is basically the last that can be done because I have got to get the grading done. So I've pushed it as far to the right as I can. Canvas is your one-stop shop, and I'm going to pause here in a second and show you how the Canvas pages are laid out. But in general, there's three main things that you're going to find on the pages for each of the modules. There's an intro section that talks about, what kind of guiding questions there are per module. You're also going to see PowerPoint slides and video lectures. Your quizzes and assignments are all posted and collect within Canvas, and that's where your grades are. And so at this point, I'm going to pause and I'm going to go to Canvas and we're going to talk about how the material is laid out there. Okay, so we are in Canvas now. And for those that are not familiar with Canvas, this is how it's laid out. Um, There are a couple of things that I'm going to orient you to. So the first one is at the very top of the homepage, there's a course introduction section. This is at the very top. You'll see a bio for me if you want to learn some more things. There is these PowerPoint slides in the introduction part. There's also the syllabus, which is the next one that says Ayers Summer 2026. And then there's a link to the Challenge of Politics book. You can also get to the book by clicking on this vital source course materials. But if, for instance, I click on this vital source materials, it's going to pull up the book, and it takes a second, so just know it will take some to load. And here is the pages. You'll also see there is an AI assistant on the right that can help you as well, but this takes you right to it. You can also use the link that's here. It just kind of routes it a different way. Sometimes it'll have you log in or ask you for a login. Um, in this case, it just took me right to it. So either way, I've got those two links. The next thing you'll see on the right-hand side is you have a to-do thing. It'll give you the suspense dates for when stuff's due, and it will kind of help keep you, on track with that. Um, the next part, and let me go back to view as a student, I'm sorry. The next part here is you have the assessments. So all the graded assignments are right here together. You don't have to go look for them or hunt for them. You'll see your introductory survey part 1 and 2. You got your quizzes, your short response video, response papers. They're all in here. Then the next thing you'll notice is you've got modules. Each one of the modules has a section. So the way that I've organized it is that you would click on this part here for module 1. So it's the first part for each module. When you open that, it's going to give you a short little sentence about what this is. It says it's an introduction. It'll give you the page numbers. It's the same thing from the syllabus. And then it's going to give you a set of guiding questions. The idea here is to help you, before you do the readings, kind of key in on what's the important things to take note. So instead of doing the reading and then have to figure it out, I'm trying to make it as helpful as possible to guide you to those points. You don't have to turn in answers to the guiding questions because I'm going to assess your ability with all of the assessments. But some students find that, answering these questions, writing them down is helpful to work through that. Then the next thing you're going to see is there's a video lecture. Oops, clicked on module 2. It'll work either way, but let me go to module 1. Module 1, if I click this link, it's going to take me to a YouTube video of me providing the material as if we were doing it in person. So for some students, they learn better through watching and listening. I've provided that as well to augment and kind of support the readings. There's a lot of carryover between the two, but you'll want to do both. But again, I found that students, especially in the online section, they've seemed to like having this resource. And then the last part you're going to notice is there is the PowerPoint slides from the video lecture. So that way it can help. Some students will open this up and kind of take notes along. They'll download it if they want. You can do that. It's for your, kind of for your use. Don't get distracted by the date on the lower right. That just means that's kind of the version of the slides that I'm using. I can through each time to make sure that it's still relevant, but it just helps me know, as I work through different iterations and teaching the class, which one I'm kind of using in there. And you'll notice for each one of the modules, there's that same setup. You'll have kind of an introduction, you'll have a link to a video, and then you'll have PowerPoint slides. Everything is loaded up for the course, so you can work through at your own pace. Note that for Module 6, there's no additional work. It's just kind of a time period or a module that I associate or give to students to do response paper 1. Or because it's online for the summer, it's just know that there's really only 12 modules of work. The only other two things I'll show in grades, this is where you can see your grades here. So you can see all your assessments and you'll want to go by the number of points. So remember, at the end of the day, your grade is done by the amount of points you have divided by 1,000. So don't worry about the percentage as much. You'll just worry about, hey, how close am I getting to 600, 700, 800, 900? And that's the main pieces. There are some other links to student resources that are in here that you can use. There's a link to get to tutoring. There's a link for other pieces. But the main piece, like I said, will be all from the homepage, and it is all from right here. Okay, I'm going to pause. Now, we talked about how Canvas is laid out, and now is the point where I'm going to talk about a couple helpful hints of, for taking the class. So the first one is make sure that when you come into this class, you're ready to learn and ask questions as they come up. Now, this is an on-demand class during the summer, and so your questions will have to come via email, or if you need to arrange an office hour time for us to talk through live, we can do that. But at the end of the day, the course is for you, and so you kind of get out what you put in. The second thing is that I always ask students to make sure that we're treating others with respect and kindness. Even though we're not going to meet, in person as students, I always share that because we should just do that as general practice. The third thing is that I expect the work, your work is your work. I've done this class now for 6, 7 years at Johnson County, and got pretty good at, being able to recognize when there's AI being used for, answering questions or generative AI. There are ways to use AI within kind of academics and even within political science. But what we don't want you doing is taking the quiz or taking a test, running it through an AI engine and just printing out the answers. The other thing is just to kind of share is that there's a lot of tools that we have as instructors that also helps us identify when there's AI. And even if it's just little things like, the quizzes, I know how long about they should take. And so if there's a quiz that has, I know it should take at least, 30 minutes or so to answer well, and a student completes it in 2 minutes, it's pretty safe to say that AI was used to answer it. And so there's a lot of ways, that we know. And I just say that up front because my intent is not to try to catch students doing something wrong. I'd rather just say like, hey, just do it the right way. You'll get more out of the class and you'll actually, most likely score better and do better than relying on AI. The next thing is if life takes over, make sure you reach out to me. I understand that things happen during a course. There are illnesses, there are things that come up with work or family. Um, and just make sure that you're proactive in talking to me because the earlier I know about it, the faster that we can work through what the solution will be or how we're going to accommodate through that. And then the next thing is make sure you turn in the assignments on time. Every semester I have students that fail. Every time is because students don't turn in assignments. I've never had a student who's failed the class and turned in all their work. I have had students fail who don't turn in work. And when you think about the points, if quizzes are each worth 100 points and that's 10% of the class, turn in 3 quizzes, you're already down 30% in the class already. If you don't turn in 3 quizzes and a response paper that's worth 200, that's 500 points. That's half the course. There's no way to pass the class. So make sure you turn the work in, and most likely, students have done fine in the class. A lot of students do well in there, but I just point that out that you do have to make sure you turn the assignments in, and that's normally the biggest pitfall students have. Um, if you find yourself though, where life is taken over, make sure you reach out. And I try to be pretty good about responding as quick as I can so we can talk through that. With the code of conduct and AI, make sure you abide by the student's guide. Political science is a field that requires research. And so you do have to, look up things. It asks you to think critically, and there's an expectation that you share how you got your information. You're not expected to know everything, so you should be using resources in political science. It's not an English class where you're coming up with completely original thought. We just want to make sure that you cite and reference it when you do. And if you have a question on what's right or what's wrong or how to go about it, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to a librarian or the University Writing Center. I mentioned this before, but again, I've seen students use AI well to enhance their learning. Most of this is in when they're using it to help summarize a complex idea or using it to help double check some of their work with their saying, hey, this is kind of my answer. Does this kind of make sense? And AI will say yes or no. Those are ways to use AI to enhance it. But poor uses of AI is when it's used to generate original answers to questions, or you try to take a test and or an assessment, run it through, and just go with what AI says. And that's really for two things. Number one is it's not your work. I want to be able to assess your ability to understand and think critically and apply the material. And so it's not really an assessment of you if it's just AI I'm doing the assessment of. And the second thing is I've seen AI get things wrong, and AI is not taking this class. And so it doesn't know the things that I've covered. It doesn't know the examples that we're using. And so, it's a pretty telltale sign if I say, hey, you know, give me an example that we use in the course to display this concept. If you ask that question to AI, they may give you a relevant example, but it may not be the one that we use. And so I'll know just off the bat that it's not your work because that, unless you did some independent research on your own, which you should cite if you do, I kind of know like data came from somewhere else. Every semester, I ask your peers to provide advice to their peers that are going to take the same class because ultimately we're here to help you be successful. So these are some of the comments that your peers have shared. A lot of it, if you kind of read through these, it'll talk about taking advantage of the video lectures, making sure you listen to them. Taking a look at, it says anyone can just look at the slides, but the video lectures go into more depth. Don't procrastinate. Make sure, again, another percent watch the video lectures and take your own notes. Read the pages of signs and have the slides printed out and accessible. So if you have trouble understanding material, video lectures are a wonderful tool. So again, there's a lot of people that have found the video lectures to be helpful. One person at the bottom said they kind of use them like a podcast and they would just kind of listen to them as they commuted into work. So it's really, I try to provide as many resources to you as can be. When students struggle, it's normally because of these things. They don't prepare for quizzes, and because they're open note, they think that they can look everything up on time. Um, I give enough time for the quizzes to make sure that you can think through the answers, that you can look and reference your notes. But if your plan is to learn the material the first time during that quiz taking, you're probably not going to do as well as you could otherwise. Second is that, again, I mentioned the students don't turn in assignments where they don't turn them in at all. They don't check Canvas. They don't stay up to date. Life takes over. They don't let me know and they get behind. Um, they don't give themselves enough time for the response paper. So again, I give the prompt on the response paper now. You can read the response paper prompts for the first one's not due until July 19th. So you have a month to think about that. And so because of that, I mean, I expect the answers to be good. And to be thoughtful. And if they're not, or I can tell they're rushed or they're just not complete, that scores low, and you've had the ability to do that. And there is a different expectation when you're answering a quiz that you only have an hour for and answering things versus a response paper that you have much more time. Again, it's the reliance on AI, making sure you proofread your papers. And then I've had some students who think that I don't actually read the papers. And so make sure you put content in the papers that's relevant. Um, you'll be surprised at some of the things that people will say. A little bit more about me. So I've been teaching college for over 15 years now, taught political science in a lot of different fields, international relations, comparative, and American politics. I taught at several different places. I've taught at West Point, Stanford, taught Johnson County for the last, again, 6, 7 years. I'm an adjunct also at UMKC. I've had all kinds of students. I've had undergraduates and graduate students, international students, US students, young, old, good, bad. I've had students who are doing full-time work. And especially during the summer, we do get a lot of students who are going full-time at another college. I've had high school students. I've also had students who haven't been in high school or college for a long time, and they're just taking it because they either want to get back into it or they're just taking it for interest. And so the point being is I understand students come into this class from a lot of different perspectives. And so I try to present the material in a way that can appeal and can work for a lot of different types of students. Um, in my previous life, I was an Army officer for 20 years. I've been to a lot of different places in the world. And that does, inform some of the examples that I'll use, but it does give me a perspective about how political science kind of plays out in the real world. Additionally, I work in the private sector outside of Johnson County. I mostly work in telecom, and finance, marketing, and sales strategy roles. Still working full time, and so during the day, that's my day job. And so if you email me during the day, I'll do my best to respond as quick as I can. But normally, I can get back. I can respond to it that evening. I've got four kids. One's finishing up their last year in law school. I got one that's a KU grad who works actually with me at the same telecom here in Kansas City. Um, I also have a student who's now they were a freshman, they're now a sophomore, and then I got one in high school. Things that are important to me, my family, public service, being kind, doing what's right, my students and my athletes. I coach volleyball as well. And so when I'm not working and teaching, I'm generally helping my kids with their school, I'm coaching volleyball, or I'm taking pictures. And you might be wondering, like, how does someone who, may have taught at West Point and Stanford, end up teaching here in Johnson County? And I'll just say that, and I'll talk about it at the very end, but I teach because I enjoy it. Um, I love teaching back when I was in the Army. I loved being able to teach before. And my path after being in the Army took me to the private sector. And this still gives me the opportunity to teach. And so my goal is to try to share a lot of the things that I've learned and taught at different institutions and try to bring that into the classroom for your benefit. And here's just a couple of pictures. So I really enjoy doing macro photography, which is like really pictures that are really, really close up. I also do a lot of wildlife and landscape photography. That swan that was up in the upper left was actually in Northern California a couple of years back. And then I do like taking other kinds of pictures. One of my dogs is on the lower right, but that's my other kind of fun pastime besides teaching. So a couple closing thoughts. Again, why do I teach? I teach because I enjoy it and I want to help students learn. Um, you know, this is why I do it. I don't do it for any other reason other to help you. And the day in which I don't think I'm helping provide students an environment that they can learn is probably the day I should stop doing this job. Um, the second thing is what's important to me is being kind. This course is a safe place. I've very little tolerance, in fact, zero tolerance for any kind of comments or behavior that's demeaning, bullying, language that's racist, sexist, misogynistic, disparaging to others. Um, and when I think about the second most important thing to me, I say, see above. Um, Part of my experience in my life has been going to different places in the world. I've seen enough hate and cruelty out there, and certainly know that life is tough enough, and we don't need to contribute to that. And so my goal is that this is a positive experience for you, and that this environment is a safe place. And then the last thing is ask questions. At the end of the day, this is your learning experience, and that's something that you're paying for. So this is all for you. It's not for me. And so if you have things that are you're wondering, or things that you want to learn about, or questions you want to ask, don't hesitate to reach out. Um, and other than that, I will provide updates through the course, just kind of where things are progressing, where you probably should be in the class at this point. But otherwise, it's really on you to help reach out to me and say, hey, either you have a question or you're struggling, or anything else that you want to share. At that point, this concludes the introduction video. Thanks for watching. And again, welcome to Polls 122.